welcome to this Chamilo onboarding session. My name is Yannick Warnier and we're going to be together for a little bit less than an hour to talk about Chamilo and how to start with Chamilo, because we realized in the last few months that a lot of new people is getting on board with Chamilo, and maybe they don't feel as comfortable as most people that have been using Chamilo for a while now. In this session, we are going to talk a little bit about the history of the project itself, and then we're going to dive into pretty much bare installation of Chamilo to show you how things can be done and how you can use Chamilo efficiently for your needs. So my name is Yannick Warnier. I'm one of the co-founders of the Chamilo project. We created it in 2010, and Chamilo obviously can be qualified as different things. It's an open source e-learning platform. It's a free software LMS, or learning management system. It's sometimes called a virtual classroom system. We like that name a little bit less because we're not really, it can be connected to video conference systems, but it's mostly a platform that provides by itself all the elements necessary to manage your courses online. And in this sense, it's more like the real definition of learning management system, right? So in terms of history, it's important to know that Chamilo exists since 2010, but actually it has some important elements of history before. And one of them is that it started actually with the Claroline project in 2001, while Moodle, for example, started in 2002 with the first release of their software. So it's Chamilo is a fork of the Dockers project, which was created in 2004, and that project was a fork of the Claroline project. What it means is that essentially we share common code with the 2001 Claroline platform. So we have a combined history of technical development, let's say, and also of user interface, etc., that dates back to 2001. But otherwise, if you consider only the Chamilo project, we've been created on we released our first version on the 18th of January of 2010. And so we've passed 11 years, we're almost at 12 years of existence as the Chamilo project. Why would someone decide to use Chamilo? So the first and main reason why we have users that decide to use Chamilo rather than Moodle, for example, is that it's easy to use. It's simply, in terms of interface, in terms of processes, decisions making, it is something that is more intuitive than what you would find in other software like Moodle or other similar LMSs. What means is that the time that a teacher will spend building a course, for example, will be shorter, and so the teacher will have more time to actually build the content, and usually that results in having teachers that are more motivated by the platform than on other similar platforms. And that means that the course content in the end is actually of better quality, because they have been able to spend more time checking the content quality rather than finding the right options in the software. Chamilo allows you to build complex learning paths where you have dependencies, requirements before moving to the next step. It allows you to create assignments, improve the course's quality through the surveys tool. It allows you to do real-time tracking, so every report that you can find in the software is actually real time. It's calculated when you load it, which is less efficient for some tasks, but it's actually a very powerful tool if you need that to be real time. It has a skills-based approach, so you can, if you want, you can implement skills, and it does that through the open batch standard, which means that any activity in a course can be attached to a skill, and you can say, okay, the people that will achieve this activity can be considered as having acquired the corresponding skill. It also has a social network which allows you to collaborate and engage with other users of the platform, and it's developed as a free software, or it's also called, well, it's not the same, but it's very similar, called open source. And so basically you can do with the software uh, almost whatever you want. You can download it, install it, you don't have to ask anyone. You cannot, for example, change its name without, or suggest that you've built the software and stuff like that. But otherwise, you can freely use it, modify it to your need, and don't have to pay any license for that. Why did we decide to go open source? I think I don't need to go into these details today, but if you're interested, there's a new report on the European Commission website. The link is down below in the slide, which is a 390 pages report that explains how important open source is to the economical development of Europe in terms of technological independence, competitiveness, and innovation. The Chamilo project itself is composed of one non-profit association and a group of cooperating businesses or universities that participate in the development of the application, both in terms of to the association, which protects this the open source aspect of the software, while other organizations can connect to this association to collaborate on the project itself. So you can consider that because it doesn't depend on one specific company, software works well right now, it can be maintained even if all the combined contributors to the project disappear. The software itself will continue to work. It will need minimum maintenance after a few years. The open source aspect also makes the software kind of immortal. You cannot really, there's not a centralized point. There is a centralized point for the trademark, for example, but it's not like you could delete the software and then it wouldn't work anymore or something like that. There's a public repository that is there. Many people have a copy of the software, and in any case you can always recover a copy and modify it without getting locked in a licensing term nightmare. In this session we will talk about four very important items in getting on board to the Chamilo software. One is the users, understanding how the users work. Two is the courses. Third is the sessions mechanism, and then we'll talk a little bit about the customization of the portal. In terms of users, and before we get into the platform itself, it's important to understand that there are four main roles for the platform. One of them is not as important as the three first ones. So there is the administrator, which is the person that manages the e-learning platform, the teacher, the person that creates the courses and usually will accompany the students themselves, so the people that will learn a new skill or a new knowledge through the platform. And then you have the coach, which is a person that will mostly accompany students in their studies and this role appears mostly when you use sessions. And in this case, the teacher remains the person that will build the material, the content of the course, while the coach will accompany the students. So it's not exactly the same role. It has a few differences, and it mainly acts in the context of a session. We won't get into the coach role description, or even we won't get into very deep into the description of any of those roles, but it's important to know that these 4 roles exist. There are about 10 other roles, but these are mostly contextual. So a user will mainly be one of these 4 roles, and then they can have additional permissions through other roles that they will have. Okay, so let's get into it, and we're just gonna open a local installation of Chamilo that I have right here, and we're gonna connect. This is it's not a freshly installed port. We're gonna find a few elements that might get some. Let me just hide my webcam so we can focus on the platform itself. That courses, create a new course, and a series of other stuff that we're gonna have a look at. And then you have the sessions block here, which is aptly named courses sessions, because sessions cannot exist without courses. And in there we're going to find a list of sessions, the possibility to add a session, etc. And then we have a portal block that allows us to configure the portal and different aspects of the portal. We won't go into the details important for today, but you will have access to them as an administrator. It's just a matter of learning a little bit more about Chamilo. You don't need those blocks for your system to work. So if I go into the users list, I users already. So here is a list of users. In the list of users, you will find the first name, last name, login, email, profile, whether the user is active or not. If I want to system, I can just click this icon, and this user will be logged, meaning that the next time they try to connect to the platform, they will receive a nice little message that says that their account has been, and click the add a user link. This goes to the same place. Adding a user is very easy. We can create a Robinhood user, for example. I will have to create an email, a valid email, and you have a code here. This code is free to use for whatever purpose makes it easier for you to manage your users later on. You can search users by this code. So some people we know use this code to give register ID for those users. So for example, the student ID in a university, or the identity card ID, whatever. Others use that as a common marker. So for example, they will use the same string to say, I don't know, maybe it's a G76, and this is kind of a group of users that I inserted at some point, and so I can find them all through this. Like to have their phone number available in the system. You can add a picture for the user itself, a login, Robinhood in this case. I'm just gonna take the first name and last name, and then you can enter a password. You can either ask the system to generate a password automatically, and in this case the system will send an email to the new user with his or her password, but you can also enter a password yourself and then provide the password to the user in person, and then ask the user to change the password later on. The little checkbox here, so if I say I have ABCD, this is blocking any password. You could have just A, and that would work. Okay, it will tell you that it's very weak, but yeah, it's possible. So we have a user Robinhood with a password of A. And then you have to choose the profile. So the profile, as I said, you have mainly 3 or 4 important profiles: trainer, learner. Trainer is teacher, learner is student. It depends on your naming processes. You have a human resources manager, sessions administrator, a student superior, an invitee. And if you want to have an administrator, you have to select trainer and click administration here. This is the only way to get a user to be an administrator. So an administrator is also automatically a teacher. If you want to have multiple languages on the system, you can choose the language of the user here. The language of the user will specify which language the user sees when using the platform for the main menu. But it's important to know that the courses have more importance than the user language. So for example, if an English speaking user with English set as the language enters a course in Russian, the whole interface will change to Russian. This is our principle of immersion. So then you can decide to send a mail to the new user or not. If you don't want to, maybe you're creating the user already in advance and you don't want them to know that they have an account just yet. So then in this case you can select no, and then you can choose whether you want this user to expire after some time, or or set it as inactive for now, etc. The rest of the fields here is really optional. This depends on your configuration. There are a few additional fields that I added myself in this portal, but basically none of them is really essential to your processes later on. So you can either add this user and return to the administration page, or you can add more, meaning that once you've added this one, disable user, and so the user was disabled. So if I want to see if that account works, I will have to disconnect and connect with this account. Now I know the password of this user, so it's easy to connect and check if effectively the user account creation worked and login and password work. But if I just want to see something as this user, to check the system and see if everything is all right, I can just click this icon here. For that I really have to disconnect. And then, because I really don't want this user, this was just a test, but I don't want an additional administrator, I will go and edit the profile of this user, change the role to the profile to learner, so that he's not an admin anymore. You can see here admin changed to no, and I'm gonna save, and now I have a simple user that's called Robinhood. If I connect as this user again, maybe you noticed when I did that first, I had still the administration tab here. Now it's disappeared. Why? Because I'm not an admin anymore, so I don't have access to the administration tab. Okay, so the interface changes depending on the profile that you're using. So I'm an admin and I can create a new user. I can see the list of existing users. I can export the list if I need to. I can import, for example, let's say I have 3,000 users to import in one go. I can either load the form 3,000 times, that is probably gonna take me some time, or either in CSV or XML formats. And there are example files here to show me how I should fill that Excel or that CSV file or that XML file. There's also an example here at the bottom explaining which fields are mandatory. So the only mandatory fields are those ones. Maybe you ask yourself, how are we going to define a username if we're not providing the username itself? Well, email and a password will generate one password randomly if you don't mention one to start with. When you do that, you can decide to send emails to all the users individually. The options here is to check that how to check that the file doesn't contain users that use the same email. In this case, it will prevent the creation of all if you've already inserted them. And to finish that section of users, you can use it to edit existing users. Like for example, all the 3,000 users have changed their emails. You could simply re-upload a new CSV or data related to the user, except all personally identifiable data. So if you're after a little bit of time, in this case, you are actually the result that an age, for example, then you want, in this case, if you want to do something based on age, you would have to store, it will automatically show a field resembling this one in all the user forms, which means that any user can update their profile to set a date, or you could import that date in a CSV file or XML file to add this information about your users. Okay, so this is pretty much everything you need to know about profiling without going too much into the details. And the classes is a very practical way to classify how many people were in that group. From my side, it looks like everything is going fine. I'm not sure, maybe just waiting for a little bit will help that. Okay, let me check. The configuration here, hopefully that will work better now. And maybe it's due to the size of the screen that I'm sharing. I'm very sorry if that that impacts the quality of the audio. I'm also recording in local, so if you don't have, recording helps. Click create a course and set, for example, this is my course. I'm just going to use very ugly names because I don't want to go too much into the details of inventing a new course, but basically you catalog and any that course, and I can also pick a template, so I can choose from existing courses. I have to know their names, but I can search from existing courses and say, okay, I want to have actually this course as a template, meaning that I could define a course, a simple course, with all the structure that I need in the documents, in the learning path, etc. And then once this template is created, I create other courses using this template. You need to switch to course as a student will see it. Maybe you notice here that you have a few options of edition. You have a small eye icon next to the name of each tool. But if you hide, for example, all the tools, okay, they still appear for you as a teacher, but if you switch to student, then you cannot see anything anymore. If you come back to teacher view, you enable the documents and the test tools, for example, and you switch to student view, you're seeing those two tools only and not all the other tools. This is usually considered good practice. Don't try to use all the tools of the course at once. This is usually very distracting for the final users. You want to have only the tools that you will use, enable them with the eye icon or disable them with the same eye icon. When they're disabled, they appear in gray and the eye is crossed. When they're enabled, there are colorful icons with an opened eye. Okay, and so we're going to use those ones. I'm not going to go through all the tools that you have there, but let's say that you have many tools available to create the content. Usually documents, tests, tools that are just document and test, I can leave those icons there. And if I want to add an introduction to my course, I can just click this icon here, create some text, welcome to this course, trying to be a very system in this case. Go to find a nice image that I can use. Okay. and I can define the size of the image. This is very big, usually more like 800. I can check the responsive image item, so it will resize as I need. I can align it in the center, and there we go. So basically, because I have added this image, now if a student enters the course, she will see this and obviously the image here, it's a photo, but it can be a specific link or other icons that you like better. Okay, but that will get applied only to your course. Okay, so what happens if I want to create a document? Okay, so I want to go here in the documents tool. I will have the list of all the documents that exist in my course, and obviously because I uploaded an image right now, the image appears here. I can see that it's 2 megabytes, so that's quite a big image. And I can either create a new document directly on the platform, so say introduction, and I can use a template for those documents. So for example, title, subtitle. I can change the image here. It's an element that can be deleted, and I will create that page. Now, just so you know, we are working on new templates. The templates that we're using now are very old templates, so they are limited in size. This is something that will evolve in the next versions of Chamilo, but you can upload your own templates if you want. You just have to create a new document, do a little bit of edition here. You can actually edit the source of the document. So if you have a designer available at your organization, you can ask them for a nice looking HTML file, and they will provide you with some code that you will paste here, and then you can use as a template for all documents later on. If you want to use, for example, the introduction that I just created, if I wanted to use that one as a template, I could just click that this icon here with the magic wand, and that would create a new template with this document, from which I could create other documents later on. I won't go into the details here of all the other options, but if you want to if you want to design some kind of chart or graphic, you can click on this one. If you want to record audio, you can use this icon here. Now, the second activity, I'm just going to delete this image here because it's unrelated to the course. Then if I want to go a little bit further, I usually will have to create some test at some point. And the test is just a matter of deciding what type of test you want to create. So here I'm just going to call it test 1 of Temp 4. That's the name of the course. This is just my way of naming it now because I'm doing a demo, and I will reuse that test later on. But otherwise, you would just put, because it's in your course anyway, you would just put, I don't know, initial test, and that's the first test that you will use in the course, or you could say chapter 1 review or something like that. Okay. Now, creating a test is as easy as setting the name and going to the edition of the questions. But if you want to, there are many options that you can select from about the feedback, when to show it, how to show it, how to show the score to the learner, whether you want all questions on one page or one question per page, which type of order you want. So if you want random questions or if you want random by categories, etc., etc., you can shuffle the answers between them rather than showing always the same order for the answers. You can display questions categories or not. You can hide the titles of the questions and just use the longer description. You can select a maximum number of attempts. This is usually very successful, a very interesting option, very popular, sorry. And you usually, if you use the number of attempts, you
most people use 3, so you have 3 attempts to get it right in the test. It really depends on what you want to do, but usually most people would just say 0, which means that you don't have any limit, or 1 if it's an exam, and in this case you have only 1 attempt. There are other options that you can activate. You can enable a start time and end time of the availability of the test, propagate negative results between questions. This is a bit more complex. Save the correct answer for the next attempt. Review your answers, which will allow the user to check one question as unsure, like they've answered something but they want to review it later. Enable time control. So if you check this one, you have another box that opens, and the time control will allow you to set a number of minutes. So let's say 5 minutes, and if you set that, then you will have a visible counter, and once it's over, the test is finished, right? You can prevent users from moving backwards to the previous questions. You can have a pass percentage, a text that appears at the end. And you can also, if you included this test in the learning path, you can mark this check so that the title of the test gets updated in the learning path. So once I'm ready, remember that I could have just passed all these options and just created the test directly, and that would have created a test that has an unlimited number of attempts, and that has all the default options that were marked when we open the advanced parameter setting. And this is the list of questions. So all the questions that you can create are, if you pass the mouse over them, it will tell you what type of question it is. If you click on them, it will show you a form that helps you understand what type of question it is. So here, for example, what color is generated by mixing blue and yellow, for example. It's a very basic question that doesn't have a lot of possible complaints about the orientation of the question. This is here. I mean, I could just put the name of the question there and then the possible answer. So that would be black, pink, green. Obviously blue and yellow is green, and then white. Okay, and if I do that, I will have to mark this column that says true. I will have to use it to mark which one is true of all those proposals, and then I will give a score to this question. Okay, so this is pretty much it to create a question. You have other ways to do that. You can import a question from a file. This is done at another level, but you could import a question from another course. So if you want to, if you click on this questions bank, you can say, okay, I want to import the questions from the course called Temp3. And in Temp3, you already have 3 questions, right? And you can either decide to copy this question, so have a copy in your course, or you could reuse this question. This is an option that's not always available, this option here, but there is documentation on how to enable this mode. In this case, you will reuse the question, not copy it, meaning that you could have only one question used in 15 different courses, and every time you modify the question, it's modified in the 15 courses. Okay, so this is also a dangerous option. That's why it's not enabled by default. But if you have the right to use the question, which is filtered here, you can only see the courses to which you have access as a teacher. Then you should be able to modify it also, right? So this is the idea. And if you want to just copy the question, that's what I'm going to do here, and you return to your test, you can see here that you have the question that's been copied. The only issue here is that it has a score of 10, which is relatively unfair in comparison to the first question. So I will go into the question, edit it, and say that the score is 1, as for the other one. Okay. So this is why it's important also to be able to copy questions, right? So you don't end up with questions that have a score that doesn't match your local test. Okay, so this is it. We have two questions. Now we want to look at what the test looks like. So we're gonna use this option here, preview, and it's gonna, here basically you can have a section that explains what is expected of you in the test, what you can do, what you cannot do, how much time you have, and here tells me how many attempts I have. So at the moment I did 0 attempt, but I have only 1. So if I fail, then I will have no other opportunity. So here you can see that the time remaining is shown in orange. It is in orange because it's less than 5 minutes. When it's less than 1 minute, it goes to red. Okay. So what color is generated by mixing blue and yellow? Green. Well, I will miss intentionally. When I click next question, you're gonna see here that it shows how many questions have been saved so far. How many answers, sorry, have been saved. So here the other question, the copy version. Here it tells me actually what I have to answer, right? But otherwise the question would be here, and then I would have options, and I would have to select for each option whether it's true, false, or whether I don't know. And in this case, false, if I mark the wrong answer, it would remove some points, while saying that I don't know would just give me 0, right? Otherwise, this could, for example, in this case, this one would give me 1 point, this one would remove 1 point, and this one would give me 0. So +1, -1, 0. In this case, the -1 would be this one because it says answer false. So I should answer false to have a +1. If I answer this one, I will get a -1. And together here, because I answered the wrong one here, I would have a -2. Which would only apply to my question and not the whole test. To the whole test, I would have only 0 because I haven't selected the option that says propagate negative results. Well, this is a detail. I will answer correctly to this one, and then end test. And you can see here it will give me a full report of my answers and the expected choices. So for example, here it's wrong. I have a score of 0 on 1. 1 was the maximum score of that question. My choice was pink and the expected choice was green. For the other answers, my choice was true, the expected choice was true. So great, I have 1 point, and for the other one as well. And the total was on 1, so I get 1 point, which gives me the total score of 1 out of 2. Okay, and here you can see 2 answers were saved in the test. This is useful when there are connectivity issues with the user's internet connection, for example. Then they can see whether the system has really registered all their answers or not. And then I can go back to the home page. Okay, so what I did now is create a document, create a test. Now what I'm going to do is create something a little bit more structured, and for that I'm going to use the learning path. The learning path is the way to structure your course in chapters in a way that will allow users to just follow along chapter 1, then chapter 2, then chapter 3, and have the right tests or the right steps between those different chapters. So for the learning path, I'm just going to call it learning path. I don't have a category, I don't mind. I'm just going to continue. And then here it allows me to select the content that I want to put in my course. So I'm going to drag and drop the introduction. And then I had a test. So I'm going to drag and drop the test. And now I have a learning path where I have a document and a test. So that will show something like this. A first item here with a document, a second item here with a test, with 1 attempt. The attempts count is not the same as on the other side because this is in the context of a learning path. So you should choose, right? If you want your students to follow the structured version of your course, then you could only enable the learning path and not enable the documents and exercises here. Okay, so you would, once you're ready, you could just hide the documents and the test, and the students would only be able to go directly to the learning path. If you do that, if everything you do is structured in a learning path, then the learning path is here, right? And when they click on the learning path, they will get to the learning path at the level of progress that they last were at. If you want to do this, then one thing that you can do to speed up the process a little bit is go into your settings of your course here and say, well, actually, when the users enter my course, I want them to go directly to the learning path. I don't want them to go into that home page of the course where there's nothing except a learning path icon. Okay, so in this case, I could just tell them redirect to a selected learning path. And if I do that, I can go back to the course homepage, go back to the learning path page, and in the learning path list, I have a small rocket, and I can click the rocket, then it gets colored red and yellow. And what that means is that if a student enters my course, the learning path will launch immediately. So they will not see this page here. They will directly go to the corresponding learning path. We can see how that goes. We're gonna connect as the Robinhood user, but to do that, sorry, I go a little bit too fast. To do that, I first need to register the Robinhood user to this Temp4 course. And to do that, I will use the user to have very flexible ways of reusing your course in many contexts. So if you have one course of mathematics, for example, and you want to teach it, let's say you're in a university and you have one mathematics course and you want to teach it to the different science orientations, you could reuse that course and create sessions for each science branch. So for example, biology, chemistry, physics, etc. They could use the same mathematical course without the students of each of these specializations to ever crossing each other. So they will work in a class context. So they will see the course together between the students of biology, but they will not see that the students of chemistry are also in the course. Right, so this is a very powerful tool. There are resources available to understand more about the sessions. I invite you to do that. There's the Chamilo manual here. You can go to docs.chamilo.org. And in this manual, you will find a teacher guide here and a little bit further down an admin guide. And in the admin guide, you have a sessions management section that will show you everything about the sessions. So, a last item before I finish this short onboarding session. The configuration settings will allow you to modify, customize the portal. So it's important to mention it because there are more than 400 options at the moment to customize your Chamilo portal. Obviously, not all of them will be useful to you, but it's important to know that there are many options and that you can change the way your portal works or change the way your portal looks. If you want to change the way the portal looks, and this is what we're going to focus on today, you can go to style sheets here, and in style sheet you can just pick another style, and this will change the style that you have here at the top. And you can also update your logo, so you can upload a new logo if you respect the sizes of the logo and the format. This will only be necessary to upload here the right logo, and it will switch the logo here with your own logo, right? So the default style is Chamilo, And if you want to change the logo, you can just select this option and upload it. You can also add a new style sheet if you want. If you have designer skills, you can download an existing style and then modify it to change the color of the bar, to change the logo, to change the icons, etc. And you just re-upload it and it will replace the current style. There are other ways to customize your portal. For example, you could use languages. In the languages, so these are the options for the languages, and you can allow the definition of sub-languages. The sub-languages will allow you, so you have to save that option, will allow you to use the English, for example, and say I have my own English. Okay, so let's say I want to do a derivation of the English language for my organization. I can just click on this icon here that says create sub-language. We'll call it English 2. We'll remain with that name. Make it visible for users to select from. And then let's say I want to modify this item that says my courses here above. So I will just find here my training. There we go. So there are many occurrences of this term, my courses, so you might have to look a little bit more to get all the corresponding terms. But now you can see that it doesn't change here. Why doesn't it change here? Because as a user, I've been assigned the language English and not the language English 2, right? So I can go to my profile, change my language, and when I do that, I will have the change appear here. So all the users that you want to have, that you want to be using this new language, you will have to switch them to the new language that you created, and then they will see all the terms appear in that derivation of language. Okay. So this will be it for today. As I said, there are many other ways to customize your portal. You can customize your course, you can customize the whole application. I'll let you go through the docs.chamilo.org manual if you want to know more. You have here, I think in system, somewhere around there, you have all the configuration options that have been described. Just maybe have a look at them. You can search for a specific feature here, and then I'm sure that you will get much better at using Chamilo after a few hours already. I have a few other items I wanted to touch today. So if you want to try Chamilo and not install it yet, you just want to see what it looks like as a teacher, go to campus.chamilo.org. You can create an account there. Don't forget to set your account as a teacher account, otherwise you will not be able to create any course. Set your user as a teacher and then connect and go create a course, test out what you can do with the course. If you like it, you can download Chamilo and do your own installation. You just go to chamilo.org/download. This requires a bit of technical skills, so if you want to, you can either find someone that can help you out with the installation, or you can use one of those cheap hosting services from GoDaddy, HostGator, stuff like that. And they do provide, with their cPanel installation, they provide a thing called Softaculous, which includes an installer for Chamilo, and it will help you out basically installing your own version of Chamilo. And if you have questions about Chamilo, you can always ask them on forum.chamilo.org. To create an account there, it requires a little bit of time before we validate your account. So if you find yourself waiting for more than 24 hours, send us an email at info@chamilo.org and we will be happy to activate your account. If you need more, if you're working at a large organization, you don't have a lot of time on your hands to implement Chamilo, you can always count on the professional services of our official providers. And it's important to understand that there are companies there that are managing portals of more than 100,000 users. So that we're really able to help most of our users find a way to implement their own e-learning solutions. Remember that free software doesn't have to mean that you have to do everything on your own. There are companies that can provide, strengthens the Chamilo project itself. With that, this is all. I thank you for your attention and we'll see you next time. Bye.